Welcome, lovely chosen ones. There are brains that do more than merely think. They reconfigure reality. The chosen ones. Let us be brutally honest. Your intellect does not fit neatly into the categories that society has made. In fact, it bends the box, turns it upside down, and even lights it on fire for fun. And that is precisely why people can't handle you. According to studies, really talented people account for fewer than % of the population. But the emotion you elicit is considerably greater than the figures. It is not simply about IQ. It's about how your abilities cut through illusions and make the ordinary seem exposed. Think about it. While most people are still suffering from a poor Wi-Fi connection, you're already 5 steps ahead by operating on mental fiber optics. That's why people are whispering behind you, call you unique, or even criticize you of being too much. What they truly mean is that your thinking disturbs me because it refuses to play by the rules. I trust that this video isn't about stroking egos or portraying you as a superhero. It's about peeling back the layers to discover why your talents shock others to their core. Why does your intellect seem like a mirror they didn't want to look into? Because when you enter the room, you do not just bring answers. You bring up questions that shake their whole identity. And let us be clear, they'll attempt to laugh it off, roll their eyes, or act as if you're overthinking. But deep down, they understand the truth. You aren't overthinking. You're thinking in dimensions that they haven't yet accessed. And it is the selected ones who have caused the planet to shake. Number 1, your mind poses a danger since it cannot be programmed. Your mind poses a hazard because it cannot be programmed. That is the naked truth. The world is structured to make individuals docile, predictable, and simple to manage. Schools do not merely teach topics. They teach compliance. Media does not just inform. It shapes thinking. Culture does more than just amuse. Conditions. Despite this, you've strolled through it all without feeling stuck. You did not consume the script. You questioned it, examined it, and discarded the elements that did not fit with reality. This rejection makes you dangerous in ways that most people will never realize. When people speak, you can hear the programming in their words. When politicians deliver speeches, you can see the manipulation buried between the words, as most people lower their heads and fall in line. You tilt yours and conclude that it doesn't add up. And it is that simple act of questioning, that refusal to mindlessly accept, that shocks people. Because one person's refusal to be programmed jeopardizes the whole compliance-based system. People sometimes believe that intelligence is defined by knowing more information or using large words, yet your intellect is something else entirely. It functions independently. It is not tied to what society considers to be proper. It does not yield to the loudest voice in the room. And that is what makes people uneasy. They cannot foresee what you would believe since you do not adhere to the script. They can't persuade you with popular opinion since your compass does not point to the mob. They can't leave you with false authority because you've looked behind the curtain and realized how thin it truly is. This is why your intellect is sometimes misunderstood for arrogance or rebellion. You don't want to dispute every rule or belief. You simply cannot be compelled to believe in things that are false. You refuse to adapt your intellect to their comfort zones. Even when you strive to blend in, your resistance is enough to distinguish you. The irony is that many people secretly appreciate it. They may not acknowledge it, but they secretly envy your capacity to think for yourselves. They've spent their whole lives following programs, but you've been developing your own code. More than anything, your intellect astounds others. It demonstrates that freedom of opinion still exists and that truth cannot be fabricated. Number 2, you have ancestral codes concealed in your DNA. You have ancestral codes concealed in your DNA. That is why your brilliance seems so odd, even inexplicable. It is not something you learned in class or from a motivating book. It's something that exists deep inside you. Something carried down via the family long before you were born. Every talent you possess has roots, and those roots extend into the lives of people who came before you. Some of your ancestors were unable to exhibit their genius due to the circumstances they lived in. They were silenced, enslaved, dismissed, or denied the opportunity to advance. But the gifts did not die with them. They were preserved until someone in the lineage was powerful enough to open them. That person is you. People may not always understand why you think the way you do or how ideas come to you. So, naturally, they believe you're just clever or skilled, but it goes far deeper than that. What they are witnessing is the resurfacing of knowledge that has been stored inside your innermost being. That is why your insights seem to be older than your actual age. It is why you can come into a new scenario and feel as if you already know how to handle it. It's not a fluke or coincidence. It's a memory coming back to you. Others find this kind of intelligence disconcerting since it is not acquired in the expected manner. They trust knowledge obtained via credentials, systems, or titles. However, displaying presence without any of these man-made validations disrupts their sense of order. They cannot explain why. You only know what you know. So, instead of embracing your ancestral roots, they label you as unusual or weird. What they're truly seeing is evidence that intellect does not begin with civilization. It all begins with the spirit and the bloodline. Your presence reveals something most people avoid. Mankind is more bound to the past than it acknowledges. You hold memories of sacrifices made, wars waged, and truths concealed. You are the living embodiment of unfinished business. That is why your donations benefit more than just you. They speak for several generations. When people claim you are unique, they are only partially correct. You are not just one. You are many. You are the sum of voices, dreams, and knowledge. That time I attempted to delete. And that is why your intellect and talents have such a profound impact on others. Number 3, you can detect patterns quicker than anyone can lie. You can detect patterns quicker than individuals can lie. That is one of the most acute aspects of your intellect. And it's exactly what makes others uncomfortable around you. Confusion is essential for people's survival. They rely on people being either preoccupied or too trusting to see the flaws in a tale. But you aren't wired that way. You have the ability to detect contradictions in the same manner that others do. And it occurs before the untruth has really landed. Someone's tone does not match their statements. Their behaviors contradict their assertions, or their tale is incomplete. Your mind immediately picks up on it. This is why people frequently feel vulnerable in your company, even when you don't say anything. Your perception operates at a rate that they cannot keep up with while they are still determining what lie to tell. Your brain is already doing a quiet audit in the background. You've already identified the mismatch, discovered the underlying motive, and linked the dots they thought were dispersed enough to hide behind. Most people believe that time is required to expose the truth. However, this is not true. You read it in real time, which scares people because it takes away their power. Lies are intended to buy time, manipulate, and test boundaries. However, when someone sees through them right away, the whole act crumbles. That's why others accuse you of being too suspicious or paranoid. It is not paranoid at all. It's accurate. It is the capacity to see through fog before it has settled. Your knack for recognizing patterns extends beyond lying. You can predict behavior. You know what's coming. Not because you're guessing, but because you've seen the beat before. Life gives hints, and although most people ignore them, your intellect recognizes them and deciphers their meaning. That is why you often forecast surprising results for others. It is not prediction. Rather, it is pattern identification at a level that most people cannot understand. The fact is that this talent is both a joy and a hardship. It keeps you safe from fraud, but it also isolates you. People dislike being read rapidly because it pushes them to confront their own inconsistencies. However, this is precisely why your intellect has them shaken. Your eyes do more than simply see. They interpret. Your mind does not just listen. It exposes a few of your intellect offenses by revealing their laziness. Your intellect defends because it exposes their sloth. Most folks aren't really bothered by what you know or can do. They are disturbed by what your genius causes them to confront inside themselves. You are live proof that discipline, curiosity, and perseverance yield results, and that reality hurts for those who choose comfort over advancement. Your presence shatters the illusion they've painstakingly constructed to justify mediocrity. They convinced themselves it was inconceivable that they were unfortunate or that excellence was only for a select few. Then you step there, shattering the boundaries they said were unshakable, and their justifications crumble in front of them. This is why adoration swiftly becomes hatred. They will first compliment you, calling you talented or exceptional, in order to build distance. If you're exceptional, they don't have to hold themselves responsible for what they might have accomplished. However, the longer they are around you, the more difficult it is to conceal the reality. They had the opportunity to do more, but chose not to. And your wisdom sheds light on the reality. You are not purposely making them feel tiny. You're just enjoying life to the fullest, refusing to conform to the sloth of others. However, the difference is clear. Your drive exposes their lack of motivation. Your inquiry exposes their comfort. Your consistency indicates shortcuts. They took the corners. They cut at the times they picked. Sleep over sacrifice. No matter how hard they tried to hide it under criticism or laughing, they understand that the distinction comes down to decision. This is why some would go out of their way to undermine you. They'll claim you had it easy and were fortunate. The doors that had previously been closed for them now open for you. These are comfort stories intended to mask their laziness. They refuse to acknowledge that you have toiled, sacrificed, and suffered in ways they were never willing to. The unfortunate fact is that most people would rather despise genius than aspire to meet it. Your intellect is insulting not because you are arrogant or proud. It's that your entire being necessitates honesty. You serve as a reminder that individuals are frequently capable of more than they realize. That reminder does more than just shake them. It exposes them. Most individuals spend their whole lives trying to avoid exposure. Number 5. You observe via knowledge systems similar to their glass. That's why institutions and titles have never inspired you in the same way they do others. Society is designed to glorify symbols of success. Degrees hang on walls, medals are affixed on chests, and employment titles spread over business cards. These symbols are intended to distinguish the qualified from the unqualified and the intelligent from the uneducated. However, to you, they have always seemed to be smoke and mirrors. You comprehend that many individuals do not seek knowledge and truth. They want recognition. Recognition, unlike knowledge, is fragile. This is why high-status individuals frequently feel tiny in your presence. Their whole identity is based on external approval. And when they encounter someone like you who carries depth without the need for those symbols, it makes them uncomfortable. You don't need a degree to recognize what's genuine. You do not need a title to demonstrate your value. You don't need an institution's consent to believe that independence can cut through the illusion of power. And when the illusion crumbles, so does their feeling of superiority. It's not that you disregard education. In fact, you probably place a higher importance on learning than the average person. The key distinction is that education is not synonymous with brainwashing. You recognize that true intellect is not about remembering other people's findings. It is about asking the questions that no one wants to ask. And this kind of inquiry makes knowledge systems anxious since they rely on unquestionable allegiance. This explains why some people behave defensively around you. They perceive that you are not buying into their badges and titles, which makes them feel vulnerable. Without the layers of familiarity, they believe they have nothing left. You see straight through the acting. And for many, this is awful. The irony is that they rely on certifications to verify themselves, yet you authenticate knowledge itself by experiencing it, using it, and changing it into wisdom. You do not just ingest knowledge. Rather, you refine, question, and raise it. That is what divides you. Your intellect does not end at what or how. It delves into why. And that's where systems fail. Because when someone questions why a system exists, the weakness of its base becomes apparent. And in your presence, individuals cannot hide behind titles. Their expertise becomes clear. Their pretension is invisible. And the fact is obvious. Number 6. Your creativity is not originality. Rather, it is translation. Your creativity is not invention. It is translation. That is the true distinction between you and most people. Society likes to assume that creative genius comes from natural skill, hard labor, or astute thinking. However, the reality about your creativity is deeper, almost unnerving. It does not feel like it came from you at all. Ideas emerge completely formed, as if spoken from beyond. And your task is merely to transform them into something concrete. You're not forcing creativity. You are deciphering communications from higher dimensions and converting them to human language. Music, artwork, strategy, or vision. This is why your creativity seems weird to others. They wonder how you came up with what you've created. However, the question itself is problematic. You didn't think about it the way others did. You have got it. You pulled it down. You translated it from a frequency they're not even aware of. That is why your art has weight, depth, and vitality that no one can mimic, no matter how hard they try. They create from effort, but you create from harmony. People can feel the difference even if they can't articulate it. They'll remark things like, "There's something about what you do that feels different," or, "I can't figure out why this hits so hard." What they are experiencing is an echo of a greater source inherent in your work. It is beyond technique. It goes beyond training. It is beyond human creation. It's heavenly translation made apparent. However, this capacity causes pain because when people compare their creativity to yours, they feel confined and detached, as if they are lacking the same antenna you've been equipped with. They can follow formulae. They may imitate patterns, but they do not have access to the reservoir from which you draw. Instead of accepting that your creativity extends beyond their grasp, many disregard, ridicule, or attribute it to chance. The fact is that your creativity encourages people to consider the notion that reality is larger than what they can measure or control. And that prospect makes them nervous. But for you, it's normal. You were meant to be a link between the visible and the invisible, between raw inspiration and human expression. That's why your ingenuity is more than simply impressive. It shocks people, because they understand that they are not just watching someone work. They are seeing the translation of something timeless into the language of today. At number 7, you represent what they claim to be. You exemplify what they claim to be. That is one of the most disturbing facts of your existence. So many individuals go through life wearing masks, pretending brilliance, feigning depth, and stealing uniqueness. They adopt particular words, post selected material, and emulate the behaviors of folks they adore to the outside world. It seems convincing enough, but deep down they realize it's a ruse. Then you turn up and, without trying, you strip their performance naked. Your presence has such an impact because you don't need to perform. You don't need to push brilliance, package authenticity, or practice uniqueness. You just are those things, and intellect comes easily through your talks. Depth is found in both your silence and your words, and uniqueness comes from how you conduct yourself rather than frantic efforts to stand out. And when someone who is fake meets someone who is genuine, the difference is stark. When compared to the original thing, their replica seems cheap and knockoff. This explains why people often react to you with animosity disguised as criticism. They'll call you too many names, accuse you of wanting to be different, and make you seem pompous. These are not accurate appraisals of you. They are protective systems to hide the disgrace. They believe you're genuine. City reminds them of how much energy they use acting, and no one like being reminded that they are living as a character rather than themselves. The irony is that many of these same folks began their performance expecting to be seen as who they actually are. They tried to look clever, powerful, or distinctive in order to get respect. However, when faced with the truth, they are unable to enjoy it since it reveals how much of their identity is a costume. What makes this dynamic so vivid is that you don't even attempt to reveal them. You don't barge into rooms and announce that everyone is pretending. You simply exist. However, your very presence demonstrates that authenticity requires no work, while pretense requires constant upkeep. The silent reality eats away at them. This is why, rather than accepting you, many people dislike you. They'd rather attack the genuine than confess they've been duped. You exemplify what they spent years trying to be. That discovery doesn't only upset them, it embarrasses them. Number 8, you make difficult seem simple. You make complicated seem simple. And this is one of the most disarming aspects of your intelligence. Others perceive a tangled mess. You perceive a pattern that has to be unraveled. You don't just ingest information. You restructure things in a logical manner, and you do it with such ease that others believe it must be simple. But it is not easy. It is mastery. What happens to the others? Months of frustration, perplexity, and incessant overthinking. You may reduce it down into something simple, digestible, and beneficial, but instead of praising it, many people get upset. The fact is that complexity creates excuses. When something seems too difficult, they might rationalize avoiding it, postponing it, or quitting it. But stepping in and cutting through the cacophony eliminates the excuse. It demonstrates that what they deemed insurmountable is really a question of perception and talent. That's why some people mistake your lucidity for arrogance. But you simplify what overwhelms them. People believe you're bragging, but in fact you're just working at a higher level than they have. The gift of clarity is more than simply information. It is also about vision. You can see what's genuinely important through the clutter, which provides you an edge in almost every circumstance. While others get bogged down in superfluous minutiae, you extract the essence and deliver it as if it had always been evident. That moment shocks individuals because it causes them to admit that the wall stopping them was not as sturdy as they had assumed. Their viewpoint was what kept them captive. What makes this so interesting is how natural it seems for you. You do not need to push it. You do not need to strive. It flows. And that effortless quality makes people uncomfortable because it emphasizes the gravity of their own struggle. They struggle with issues that you transform into stepping stones, and the contrast makes them feel smaller than they would want to acknowledge. But here is the deeper reality. Your capacity to simplify complexity extends beyond just making things easier. It's about realizing potential. You show that things are not as daunting as people have been led to think. Some may dislike the exposure, while others will find it liberating. In any case, your brilliance shakes them because you make what drowns them seem like shallow water, and they're torn between thanking you and envying you. Number 9. Your vision goes beyond their lifespan. Your vision goes beyond their lifespan, and that alone distinguishes you in a manner that disturbs others. Most brains are programmed to think in the short term. They assess success in terms of salaries, annual targets, or, at most, a 5-year plan. Their imagination is limited to the scope of their own life, seldom going beyond what they can directly touch or influence. But you do not think like that. Your mind naturally extends beyond eras, cycles, and legacies that will reverberate long after you are gone. That type of foresight makes people uncomfortable because it reminds them that their thinking is restricted to survival, but yours is based on destiny. This is why your ideas are generally ignored at first by folks with limited time spans. What you observe seems ridiculous, extravagant, or even impossible. They don't understand that you're not constructing for today or even tomorrow. You are sowing seeds that will produce fruit long after their systems have failed. And, deep down, they know that if your vision is real, it will outlast not just them, but also the very institutions they rely on for meaning and safety. That reality upsets individuals because they take comfort in thinking their systems are permanent. Your insight undermines the idea of permanency. When you talk about cycles, patterns that recur throughout history, and possibilities that go beyond the existing order, you reveal how vulnerable today's systems are. Governments fail, businesses collapse, cultures alter, and fissures are already appearing. People don't want to confront the reality, so they oppose your idea, belittle it, or dismiss it as unrealistic. But behind the surface, they know you're not guessing. They know that you are coming from a position of clarity they do not have access to. Ironically, the concepts they reject will be relied on by future generations. This is why your eyesight feels so heavy. It bears the weight of the future, pushing on the present. You're not only fixing issues right now, you are creating structures that will benefit people you will never meet. This is what makes people shake. It's not only that your intellect is broader than theirs. It's that your thoughts highlight the limitations of their own worldview. They understand you are not performing for acclaim or credit, but for legacy. And legacy frightens those who live only for the now. Number 10. Your brilliance demonstrates their dependency on tools. Your brilliance demonstrates their dependency on tools. In today's environment, most individuals are unprepared to accept this reality. Intelligence is often outsourced. People rely on search engines to remember things for them, calculators to answer problems for them, applications to arrange their lives, and robots to produce for them. The distinction between human talent and technical crutch has grown so blurred that many people no longer know the difference. Then you walk up and, using nothing but your imagination, you create what others need many tools to do. That's why your genius seems so dangerous. It reminds them of what they have lost. It is not the tools. The bad tools might increase capacity and improve living efficiency. However, somewhere along the line, people stopped utilizing tools as a help and began using them as a substitute for thinking. Instead of enhancing their memory, they use reminders to develop their attentiveness. They rely on continual stimuli. Instead of pushing their imagination, they let algorithms to make decisions for them. Then you step in and use sheer brain strength to solve, create, or visualize. You do not need a machine to determine your value. You do not need an app to generate ideas. You carry the fire within you. This distinction disturbs individuals because it reveals a reality that they would rather ignore. They've gotten so reliant on their instruments that they're powerless without them. Many would be unsure how to function. But you, on the other hand, might remove the tools and still create. This resiliency makes people feel vulnerable. It is simpler to assume that everyone is equally dependent than to confront the fact that some people still possess raw, unadulterated brilliance. What makes this even more impressive is how effortlessly it goes through you. You don't have to say that you're thinking differently. It appears whereas others freeze when their battery expires or their connection fails. You stay smart, adaptable, and resourceful. That calm independence emphasizes their vulnerability. Your brilliance, therefore, is more than just talent. It is a mirror. It pushes individuals to realize how much of their intellect has been outsourced, how much of their creativity has been stifled, and how little they have invested in their own mental power. That is why they feel frightened by you. You remind them of a grim reality. Many would fall without their instruments, but you would remain standing. And the truth hurts harder than they'd ever acknowledge. You break language without destroying the message. You disrupt language without destroying meaning. And it's a power that most people struggle to comprehend. Language is a barrier for the vast majority of people. They use words in the same limited manner they were taught, reusing phrases and relying on cliches that only scrape the surface of how they genuinely feel or know. However, you are not like everyone else. You don't just utilize language. You shape it. You bend it, stretch it, rearrange it. And instead of losing meaning, your words gain even greater significance. People are shaken by this skill since it involves more than simply speech. It's a revelation. Your voice is distinct from that of others. That is intended. You refuse to be bound by the constraints of ordinary terminology. You deconstruct words and reassemble it in a manner that goes deeper than conventional discourse ever could. People may not always understand how you do it, but they get it. They can sense the vibrations in your words. Each statement has several levels of truth, the resonance that lasts long after you have stopped speaking. This is why others accuse you of speaking differently, as if it were something to scorn. But they don't grasp that your uniqueness is precisely what makes your remarks memorable. Others want to be understood on the surface, but you seek to be remembered in the soul. And the irony is that the same folks who seem perplexed are often the ones who repeat your comments later, recognizing you gave them more than a line. You shifted their outlook. People are concerned because language is expected to be predictable. It is expected to obey norms, convey definitions, and remain within limitations. However, breaking those norms while still conveying the truth clearly reveals how shallow their own use of language has become. They use words out of habit, but you use them for power. Your skill lies not just in smart language, but also in extracting meaning from areas that most people ignore. It is about voicing the unspoken and making it accessible. That is why your language serves more than simply informational purposes. It transforms. You don't break languages to destroy them. You shatter it to release it. And in doing so, you liberate those who hear you, whether they choose to accept it or not. You're clever enough to see when intellect fails. You are clever enough to see when intellect fails. And that awareness is what distinguishes you from the majority. Most individuals mistake pure intelligence for omnipotence. They assume that memorizing data, learning formulae, and continuously analyzing will solve all of life's problems. But you recognize that knowledge has limitations. You understand that reasoning can lead, but cannot cure. Reason can compute, but cannot inspire. Analysis can dissect, but cannot see what is under the surface. You explore regions where intelligence alone fails. Spiritual currents, emotional depths, and intuitive impulses are beyond intellectual assessment. People are taken aback by this viewpoint because it challenges their assumptions. They expect intelligence to be linear, collect knowledge, apply it, and produce outcomes. But you work outside of that structure. You can see the unseen forces driving choices, the emotional undercurrents molding results, and the subtle signs leading possibilities when others struggle to connect the dots using traditional reasoning. You glide fluidly across levels of reality that they aren't trained to see, and that ability makes you look virtually invincible since you aren't constrained by the constraints they accept as absolute. Understanding these boundaries also provides you with a distinct sense of assurance. You don't have to push solutions from raw logic because you understand when to depend on intuition, when to trust emotional intelligence, and when to seek spiritual direction. That mix of knowledge and intuition transforms your solutions from effective to spectacular. People detect it right away. They understand that your approach is more than simply knowing. It's about understanding what to do when information alone isn't sufficient. Others find it unsettling since most people never realize where their intellect ends. They continue to push formulae, depend on statistics, and repeat techniques with decreasing results. You do not squander energy there. You go where others cannot, seeing chances, truths, and outcomes they cannot possibly consider. That is why your brilliance shocks others. You aren't only smart. You understand the frailty of mere intellect and have learned to transcend it. You operate in areas where most brains fail, and by doing so, you redefine what it is to be brilliant. Your IQ is not just assessed by what you know. It is characterized by what you see that others do not. A number. Your presence is like to being in front of a mirror that thinks. That is why people are so uneasy when they engage with you. It is more than simply a chat. It is an encounter with oneself. Your intellect does not merely communicate ideas or insights. It serves as a mirror of their own decisions, beliefs, and limits. They anticipate dialogue, but instead encounter a mirror that does not lie. A mirror that mercilessly interprets and displays their patterns. Most people aren't ready for that kind of insight, and it shakes them in ways they can't explain. People are used to mirrors that flatter and reflect what they want to see. They avoid addressing painful facts by surrounding themselves with narratives, social proof, and soothing illusions. But you break that safety. Your words, reasoning, and knowledge easily pierce those illusions. Suddenly, the individual who thought they were skilled, smart, or sincere recognizes flaws in their own performance. They can see where they've compromised, where they've underperformed, and where they've let fear or sloth rule their actions. They can't avoid the encounter since it's immediate, unmistakable, and comes from someone whose presence cannot be ignored. What makes this even more disarming is that you don't mean to condemn or humiliate them. You just live in a condition of insight and sincerity, so thorough that introspection is inescapable. So your sheer presence causes them to face the disparity between who they are and who they might be. While some may withdraw or strike out, others are compelled to confront a rare moment of self-awareness that is both painful and revealing. The intensity of this event has left many unsettled. They recognize that their masks, posturing, and shortcuts are evident to those who see clearly. And this exposure causes both astonishment and anguish. Most people avoid mirrors because they believe they are avoiding those few people who naturally reveal facts. But you do not see this reflection as a weapon. It is an extension of your presence. You don't only interact with them, you mirror them. And that is why your presence disturbs them, since it discloses their secret selves while you stay unshaken. They are not just seeing magnificence. They are faced with both it and themselves. You are not one of a kind. You're a foreshadowing of what mankind may become. You aren't one of a kind. You're a foreshadowing of what mankind may become. And the reality is more unnerving than any oddity. People often describe remarkable people as unique simply because they stand out. but your presence is more than simply being distinct. You embody potential, a glimpse of the next level of human awareness that most people are unaware of. Your brilliance, creativity, and intuition are not anomalous. They are examples of what is possible when the intellect, spirit, and vision work in tandem. That idea frightens individuals because it exposes them to face the notion that the world they've accepted is restricted, and their own thinking may be locked in yesterday's framework. They are shocked not just by your talents, but also by what those gifts suggest about their own potential. Others watch you managing life with clarity, depth, and harmony in ways others have not dared to try. They witness you solving issues, coming up with ideas, and moving in harmony with patterns they can't see. And the scariest aspect for them is that your skills aren't simply for personal accomplishment. They demonstrate that mankind is capable of far more than the usual. You are a live example of evolution in action, indicating that awareness is growing beyond known boundaries. That is why your presence instills both awe and dread, or because what you represent is stunning. A picture of promise that evokes awe and terror because it emphasizes what people are lacking, what they have not developed, and what they risk losing as the world changes around them. Most people cling to comfort and regularity, yet you easily push those limits, pushing beyond the limitations they've become used to. The reality is, you serve as a reminder that human potential is ever-changing. You carry a blueprint of what is possible when intellect, intuition, and purpose come together, which makes regular viewpoints seem limited. Ordinary goals seem little, and ordinary lives feel stagnant. People feel uneasy because they see in you what they have yet to find in themselves. And this reflection is tough to ignore. You're more than simply a unique person. You are a herald of change. Your presence, talents, and vision hint to a future that they can perceive but cannot completely comprehend. That is why, above all things, people are shaken. They are seeing the growth of mankind through you. It leaves them both energized and acutely conscious of how far behind they are. They remain. Your brilliance is more than simply a collection of talents. It's a power that exposes, wakes, and transforms every insight, shares every truth you embody, and breaks every barrier you cross, leaving people rattled because they're not simply seeing intellect. They are addressing their own constraints. You are the mirror that pushes honesty, the lens that uncovers hidden patterns, the spark that reignites buried potential. You carry ancient knowledge, manage complexity with clarity, and express creativity in ways that others find impossible. Your existence both challenges and inspires since you don't simply exist in the environment you've created. People are shaken not because they don't understand you, but because you disclose things they've avoided about themselves, the institutions they've trusted, and the future they've been afraid to conceive. You are a link between what is and what may be, a glimpse into human development, and a force that refuses to be contained, simplified, or disregarded. The reality is terrible, clear, and deeply freeing. You are not merely unusual, you're remarkable. You are evidence that intellect, when combined with sincerity, understanding, and bravery, does not exist just in theory. It is in you. To anybody watching, recognize your own strength and the reality behind these statements. Your talents shatter the foundations around you because they were always designed to be strong. Move with clarity, create without fear, and remember that the world needs more than just intellect. It requires your level of intellect, raw, unfiltered, and unstoppable. If this message resonated with you on a deep level, do not dismiss it. Take action. Subscribe to the channel to keep up with information that challenges, wakes, and empowers you. Hit the like button to express your support for the awareness campaign. Leave a comment to share your ideas. Your voice is important, and your insights have the potential to change someone's life. And share this video with people who need to see the truth, who are ready to acknowledge their abilities and step into their full potential. Join a community that amplifies, bodies, and celebrates genius rather than just watching it. Your participation is more than simply support. It is a statement that you are awake, aware, and prepared to embrace the unusual. God bless you.